This Randy Cross edition of the Sports Gambling Podcast is presented by WinBet. Get started today and you'll get a risk-free bet up to $500. Terms and conditions apply. Get the details at wynnbet.com and download the app today. We're also brought to you by PropSwap, America's #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. Use promo code SGP on your first deposit and receive up to $500 in bonus cash. That's PropSwap.com, promo code SGP. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up at UnderdogFantasy.com with promo code SGPN and receive a free $25 entry to use in Best Ball Mania 2 for a chance to win $1 million. And of course, don't forget to download the SGPN app in the App Store or Google Play Store. Ooh, welcome everyone to the Sports Gambling Podcast. I'm Sean, stacking that money green with my partner in picks, Ryan, Real Money Kramer. What's happening, Kramer Dog?
Stacking that money.
Stacking that money. Joining us as always when we talk college football, Colby Dant, aka the Dantabase.
2 days.
We're in it. We got a bunch of college football related content, interviews coming at you. Of course, you got to check out Colby Dant and Patty C and a bunch of other guests.
NC Nick,
Terrell, team specific beat writers doing 130 teams.
More than 130 now because Boise State's got a 2.0, Liberty's got a 2.0.
We did green light the idea of a 2.0. If Colby felt like he didn't go deep enough, which there was a lot of discussion, but we did allow the Boise State 2.0. So now I think we've laid down the foundation, much like the Supreme Court has for collegiate athletes. Where there's a precedent now, so now we can have we can have 260, maybe some FCS
I'm
teams.
saying, man, I'm trying to play to my likeness.
We are in the dog days of summer, as they say.
Getting ready for football, of course, college football, NFL. You looking to get in on the win totals? Looking to get in on player props, live betting? You can do it all over at WinBet.com. WYNNBet.com. Head over there, download the app, and get that special offer up to $500 risk-free sports bet. Terms and conditions apply. But again, just fire up that Win Betting app. You're listening to Colby Dant talk about Navy football, how he loves the over. Fire up the Win Betting app. Get that deposit bonus. Get in on over 3.5, which is very reasonable. And we're gonna talk about that later with our guest Randy Cross. Awesome interview with Randy. If you're a college football fan, NFL fan, we cover a little bit of everything. And it's,
he was
sweet.
part of two of the the most memorable NFL games I can recall.
Yeah,
so
of
that's
course, both
awesome.
happened before 1990, but
and not in a dome, which is what Colby likes.
Yes, football. That's football, guys. That thing in the dome, that's not football. All right, that's just people running around.
Well, bringing it back to the win, Sean. I know we're done with that portion, but I did, very recently. I may have broken the cardinal rule of bringing the children to Las Vegas.
Oh no.
And I did show them the dome that we will be playing in come fall over at the beautiful
now that dome is going to have
the
football.
Blue Wire podcast
studio. We're getting there. Left foot, right foot, baby.
NFL week 1. We'll be out there doing some shows again. Make sure you check out winbet.com. If you can't make it out to the beautiful Win in Las Vegas. All right. We are going to get to this awesome interview with our boy, new friend of the program, Randy Cross. But before we do, it's this week's edition of
SGPN presents Real Men of Degens.
Real Men of Degens.
We salute you.
Frank Reynolds. I know who you're one. I know what you're thinking. Who is Frank Reynolds? Great question. Frank Reynolds is a rancher who was unfortunately pinned under his ATV for 2 days. Don't worry, he survived. How did he survive? He survived only by drinking beer. That's right, beer. Ice cold, hopefully a Coors Light. This is how this man survived for 2 days. They have a photo of him in the hospital. Bloody eye, bloody shoulder. He's got all these wires running out of him, but he's got a big smile on his face from surviving on beer for only 2 days. So we salute you, Frank Reynolds. And of course, Real Men of Degens, presented by PropSwap, America's #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. That's right. Maybe you were at the Win Las Vegas like Kramer in the off season, got yourself some win tickets. getting in on some win totals, maybe even some futures, and all of a sudden the team's playing really well. You want to sell, you can do it over at PropSwap.com, or you can buy. And of course, if the price you're seeing is a little high, lowball. They have a sweet bidding option, ensuring you get the best price on the sports tickets that you're buying and selling. And when you head over to PropSwap.com, make sure you download the app, but more importantly, use the promo code SGP. Get that free $500 in bonus cash. PropSwap.com. Joining us on the line, 3-time Super Bowl champ and college football analyst for CBS, Randy Cross. Randy, appreciate you making time. How excited are you that we're almost in football season?
I'm pretty excited. I'm getting to the point now where I'm just sort of stocking up on my game film from last year and looking at that early month of the season and then going back and watching like the last month of the season for them, and just trying to get as many, game tapes in as I can. And it just helps. It's especially for the coming year, because, there's going to be a lot of new faces, but especially with some of the really good teams, there's guys that have been around.
Well, yeah. And speaking of breaking down some college film, and going back and looking at the film, has any particular player, any particular team kind of jumped out at you that maybe didn't get the shine they deserved last year?
Well, he got some shine. It's just, I think people had a bad case of amnesia on Uiagalelei out of Clemson. I found it really amusing this offseason early on, talking to people about, like the Clemson Georgia game and Clemson in general, their, big meeting with Miami, all that stuff about the ACC. And it was all people were saying, well, Georgia's going to get an inexperienced quarterback in there, going against JT Daniels and against that defense. It should be a real advantage. And I was, wait a minute. I think this is the same guy that started like 4 games last year.
Yeah.
When Trevor Lawrence had COVID.
Yeah, that might have been a blessing in disguise for them that he got some early looks.
Oh yeah, I mean, you look at that Notre Dame game. I've watched that twice. There's not much to criticize about at least what he did in that game. He played really well on the road, and that's what you always want to look for, especially from a young player. It's not so much how they react when they're at home. It's get them on the road, get them in adverse situations. How do they do? And, he did really well, and he's just physically starting to really get it. He's just now maturing into his body and everything else, which is a scary thought considering he's 6'4", 6'5", and about 240.
Yeah.
And can run. I mean, he's a lot like Trevor Lawrence, but he's a little beefier.
Yeah. Good.
I was going to say
comparison.
when things break down and you're 6'5", 250, it's a lot easier to just take issues into your own hands.
Well, and you mentioned rookie quarterback there. Obviously, you had a great career with the 49ers. Very familiar. Of course, they traded up to get Trey Lance in the draft. Big acquisition. I was kind of skeptical, I guess, or didn't really understand the choice, because it seemed like to me as an outsider and the way they're setting their team up that they have like a win now team, a team that could make another run at the Super Bowl, but then they're giving up all this draft capital to bring in a rookie. It seems like they got 2 different things going on here. What do you make of the decision, and what do you think of Trey Lance?
Well, that's why we're fans and they're head coaches and general managers, I guess. I was really excited about the prospects of them either getting Mac Jones, who I thought ended up being just a larcenous steal at 15, and the league will rue the day they let Bill Belichick get a quarterback like Mac Jones.
I have Mac Jones to win Rookie of the Year, and people think I'm crazy. I go, I bet they do. Yeah, if he gets this Patriots team to the playoffs, he's going to win Rookie of the Year, and I don't know. I think he's going to eventually be the starter pretty early on in the season.
Yeah, and I also really, really liked Kyle Pitts.
Yeah,
and I thought, in that offense, you get a piece like him. I know they got Kittle,
but Pitts and Kittle,
you put him in that offense. And you can't really call him a tight end. He's going to do the same things in Atlanta, but I just really think he's going to be something special. Now, Lance may end up being an amazing quarterback. Maybe that's how it's going to work out. He basically had a high school and 1 year tape to look at. And obviously he's got a lot of upside. But we'll see. I look at quarterbacks all the time, and it's not how far down the field they can throw the ball. And it's not always just their accuracy or how fast the ball gets out of their hands. I always like to see that kind of 15 to 20 yard, that intermediate pass, how they can throw that. If they can throw it in college, if they have that touch in college, I think it's a great sign. Because, man, most quarterbacks, especially the great big studs, they try to throw laser beams 15, 20 yards down the field. And that's that territory where linebackers and safeties love to get picks. And if you don't throw a touch pass, they're going to make you pay.
Sounds like a guy who played with Joe Montana, right?
Exactly.
I was very familiar with touch.
The master of the touch pass. Well, as an Eagles fan, I want to just say thank you, of course, for your involvement in the catch, knocking the Cowboys out of the 1981 NFC Championship game. Of course, Montana rolls out to the right, throws up the ball to Dwight, and you were blocking on that play. I think what was it, a sprint right option? Right. When the ball came out, did you think Dwight was going to catch it?
Having played basketball in the off season with DC and Joe, it's one thing people didn't know about both of them. They could play hoop, they could hoop up, and they could also jump. They had some serious ups, and didn't surprise me at all. Joe put that where he knew DC could get it, and it obviously, it shocked the hell out of Everson Walls, but the whole Cowboy Nation to this day.
So
it's
good.
Not always you got something that has 40 years of legs, but it's 40 years now that I got to listen to Cowboy fans go, no, that's bullshit. He was throwing that away.
No, come on. You can tell. Even everyone thinks I'm biased because I hate the Cowboys, but come on. Clearly, he was trying to throw it to Dwight, and he put it where only Dwight could catch it.
The pump fake
was solid. Got him some extra time. We were rewatching the clip in the office here, and I couldn't help but notice when they're celebrating, Joe Montana is not in. Everyone runs up to Dwight. They're celebrating. Joe Montana isn't in the group. Why wasn't Montana as part of the celebration there?
Because he was with me in the huddle, or getting ready to get in the huddle for the extra point that was going to actually win the game. Because he was the holder and I was a snapper.
Oh, really?
I mean, I was the right guard. I snapped for field goals and extra points my whole career. And Joe held, the better part of his, that first 10-year period with Bill and whatnot, Joe was holding. So it wasn't unusual at all. No, that's where he was.
he was already on to the next play. Well, now, as far as that game, was that kind of the game, looking back on it, that really helped get the dynasty going, get you guys some respect as a team, knocking out that Cowboys team?
Yeah, relatively speaking. I don't think, especially the world of the football media, they came very, very late to the party for most anything going on in the West Coast. And it took them, and they'll never admit this, but they had their heads so far up their butts about, power football and hard nose, run football and all that stuff, big man, all that, and I played for a coach that said, you know what, we'll run at you. We'll run around you. We'll run through you. We'll use fakes. We'll do all sorts of different things. So, that was the first game where I think people sort of noticed the Niners, and it really harkens back maybe to, we had a game against the Saints in 1980. And to date me, Archie Manning was the quarterback of the Saints back then. They had a 35-7 lead at the half. Oof. And we came back and beat them.
No,
that was the NFL's greatest comeback until that wonderful Oiler Buffalo Bills game in the playoffs.
Yeah, Frank Reich getting the comeback going. Well, you played with a lot of greats. I mean, one of my favorite stories, just as a football fan, Ronnie Lott, in 1986, I think it was, playoff game. He's supposed to be playing, but he's got an issue with his pinky, and basically, I think the story goes they could either cast it or take the tip of the pinky off. He opts to take the tip of the pinky off and play the game. Were you were a part of that team, right? What was that like, seeing a guy really just go to the limit for the team there?
Well, it kind of made sense. Not to a fan, obviously, but if you look at your pinky, it's not a very big bone. What is that thing about that big?
Yeah.
And he had broken it in a couple places, so they're going to have to put pins and all kinds of stuff in there. And that would have meant he'd have had to wear one of those great big cast things on his hand, locking these two fingers up and everything down. So he just sort of decided to just take that sucker off. It's legendary, and rightfully so. I think he's one of the best defensive players to ever play the game.
Well, and I got to imagine that sets a tone in the locker room. If some guys, on the edge of playing or not, he's got like a rolled ankle or a hamstring. When you see a guy like Ronnie Lott willing to cut off his pinky, I mean, not that people didn't respect him previously, but I imagine that within the locker room, guys were like, "Oh shit, thanks Ronnie."
Well, guys know.
Yeah.
There's that term. Cause in football, especially once you hit mid-October to late October, man, everybody's hurt. Everybody's got something. They got a banged down shoulder or a knee or an ankle or a pinky or something. And it's well known. There's a lot of guys that would play with anything. And then there are guys that have to be right. Those are guys we kind of always refer to as thoroughbreds. If they could run like crazy full open, you were in trouble. But if they weren't full open, they weren't going to go. And guys like that don't last very long, because that's one of the realities of professional football. Most guys that have played it for a while, I'll tell you, is you're playing with stuff that the average person would be on crutches or in a wheelchair or having surgery with. And you just, you'd be amazed how many times sprained knees until the day after the last game. Then they're suddenly torn ligaments. And sore shoulders are sore shoulders till the last playoff game, and you lose. And the day after that,
it's getting surgery.
You got to have shoulder surgery. Yeah. That happens all the time.
I still wonder how many players of today's generation. This is where you cue in the Clint Eastwood "Get Off My Lawn," because my dad says in my era they played football. And how many players today would actually cut their pinky off? I don't know that there's that many.
No.
No, not many at all.
It's not a business decision the modern player would be making, I'd imagine.
No.
Speaking of business decisions, of course, the big news kind of in the off season here for college football is the NIL issue, where now these players can all of a sudden get paid for their name, image, and likeness. How do you think that's going to impact recruiting and just the college game in general?
The NCAA, if they have a role in football, their role in football is fairly minor, but having this NIL come in kind of gives them something to do. They've basically been an enforcement body. That's been about it.
Yeah.
Well, they better earn their money, because this is gonna take some serious watching. You're going to see compliance departments now are going to be as big as any other department in athletic departments, because it's going to take full time, groups looking after. The old days when you worried about somebody stuffing a bag of money in a guy's backpack, those are gone.
Yeah.
Now you're worried about getting that mysterious 1099. Where'd that come from?
Yeah, these kids. I have to pay taxes on this.
And I got news for these kids. Yeah, exactly. You got a partner you've never had before, and it's not the university. It's not your teammates. It's called the IRS.
Uncle Sam.
And they get theirs regardless.
It's going to be funny if some of the players were like, "Hey, before I didn't have to pay taxes on this. What's going on? Let's go back to the old days." Yeah. Now there's stuff in
it's going to be a big deal. They're going to have an issue.
Yeah.
They're really going to have an issue, because you talk about the rich getting richer. They literally will get richer. And it's been nice to see some of the teams that aren't necessarily front of mind have companies step up and say, hey, look, we're going to sponsor and pay these offensive linemen, or we're going to sponsor and pay the linebackers, or, you know, they're taking that approach. I think it's smart.
Well, maybe we can talk to Masterpiece company Web Apps America, who just signed a Masterpiece son for $2 million playing for Tennessee State basketball. So who knows?
That seems like a good payday.
Maybe we can get some offensive line.
Yeah,
love too.
And Randy, what you know, as a guard at UCLA, what kind of sponsorships you think they would have you would have got, or maybe look to partner up with? I mean, in and out, you got some bigger guys on the offensive line. What's a good guard sponsorship?
In and Out wasn't a franchise idea, and the creator's father hadn't thought of that yet when I was in college. You know, I really couldn't tell you, thinking back on it. It was just, you got by on what you got by on. It was not real lucrative, and what the thought of making money off it never at that point really entered your mind. You know, for today's athlete, it's really going to be good that these kids can do this. But people have to remember, there's nothing equitable about this. Nothing, zero. Because that deal you just talked about, Masterpiece, that's a one-off, and each team's going to have only a couple of one-offs for a good amount of money, and everybody else is going to have to try to pick up some crumbs on some of these side deals. And you know, crumbs are crumbs. You're making $5,000 in a year or something. That's pretty cool as a college.
Oh yeah,
a college student. At least now we know where those diamond encrusted Rolexes and all that
rims
stuff comes from.
Yeah, I remember on the campus of Penn State, Larry Johnson coming around some spinning rims. It's like, hey, I don't know. I don't think you get that on the stipend.
And I think a lot of people have said this, but I think, you know, to most people, like everyone thinks like it's going to be the floodgates are open. To most college students, a scholarship is a very good deal for their services. And to your point, I think we are going to see some fun outliers. We're going to see some top guys, like maybe DJ with Clemson. He hinted at a Delta deal on his Twitter.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, I think it's what Randy said is correct. I think the big news stories are going to come out of the what happens in the dark side of business, taxes. Maybe you didn't stand up to your side of the deal and the lawyers are coming after you. So I think on top of compliance, I'd be curious to hear your take, Randy, but it also seems like these universities are going to start having to offer these tangential services to these kids, whether that's a creative department to help with their marketing campaigns or a PR department.
Well, think of like SMU in the 80s with Dickerson and Craig James. I mean, look, they got the death penalty. That was tax free. But I wonder if a smaller school emerges with a lot of resources like that. But what's your take on that, Randy?
Well, I mean, it's going to be out in the open.
Yeah.
And every guy now has an opportunity to hire an agent or a representative to basically market them. And that's something that's been kind of ignored in this deal. When I read that initially, I kind of went, whoa, what? You know, you can actually have a marketing team selling you. That's going to be fantastic for them. So I think it's better. It's great for the young men. I'm not thoroughly convinced it's going to be great for the game because it really has I don't know. It really doesn't translate unless, you know, are they going to start looking like NASCAR cars
and having
guys going to have tattoos and all this stuff all over them? I mean, is that how can they do that? I mean, is that part of the deal?
It seems like they didn't figure a lot of this stuff out ahead of time.
No, you're kidding. The NCAA would no.
And they're punting to the state. I agree. I think there's really little involvement to football, and I think we'll see that the second the big like TikTok star. I think the LSU gymnast has like 5 million TikTok. I think you're going to see non-football players getting paid too, and then people
of the social media
exactly, and then people will realize this has less to do with the sport.
Who was the kid that he's probably 30 now. That was the wide receiver at Colorado. That was the downhill skier.
Jeremy Bloom.
Jeremy Bloom that got worked because he had, I mean, we haven't really had amateur athletes in a long time, you know, and when people say a long time, I go, yeah, at least 40 years. Cause all I know is when Carl Lewis ran in the 84 Olympics in LA, about 3 years later, his house was broken into. And I remember reading in an article that he was missing up to $250,000 to $400,000 in jewelry and artwork. And I'm going, no, wait a minute. These guys don't make any money. They're kind of right out of college. How does that work?
Yeah, what was?
I mean, how exactly?
Where else was Carl Lewis getting all that artwork money? You know, come on.
Exactly.
You know,
you donated.
Yeah, you don't get artwork
He's
money.
sophisticated.
Well, yeah.
No. Ask Hunter Biden. That stuff's expensive.
So the NIL that it's kind of shakes things up competitive wise, but also now we got the 12 team college football playoff right around the corner. What do you think that impact is on college football? We've always been advocates of, hey, let's make the playoff bigger as guys who like watching games and, you know, betting on games. It's more action, more playoff games. Are there potential downsides? Do you think it'll help the competition at all, or it'll just be the same teams ending up in the finals, moving on?
Well, I could give you a long extended answer about, you know, my opinion, but I'll tell you, it all comes down to
making the money
here.
symbol.
It's a lot.
Johnny Manziel.
More. You know, what is the TV deal? Ends in 23, 24, something like that.
Yeah.
It's got 2 or 3 or 4 years left in it. So I think one of the big components of this, the 12 team playoff, is going to be, you're going to have to extend the TV deal. So first you'll see the TV deal have like a 7-year extension. So it'll have 10 years on it now. And it'll be if you thought the last number was ridiculous, wait till you see this one. And once you do that, then you can lock in, you know, where you're going to slot in the bowls, where you're going to slot in the teams, where they're going to play. I'm not big on the 12 team idea. You know, I still think we have bowl games. I'm like, people don't go to bowl games. People, unless they got some action on it, don't watch a lot of bowl games. Only selective. So I guess it will increase audience that way. Well, but I'm not a fan. You look at who was in the 9, 10, 11, 12 last year ranking wise, and 12 was Indiana. Was it a travesty that Indiana didn't get a chance to compete against Alabama and Clemson? You know, that's an ass whipping they probably could do without.
I mean, it's very true.
I mean, I guess as a fan, I would have watched that game versus like what they ended up doing in the bowl game. But I see from as far as like figuring out who the best teams are.
You can say both in the same breath that we're excited to see more football games and that the 12 team playoff might not necessarily fix anything as far as other than like perceived access, right? To your point, some teams are going to get their ass beat in that first round, maybe, and maybe that's great. Maybe we need that. Maybe it's fun to watch, but I also think I'm kind of with Randy. Like I've heard people make the argument, I'd rather go back to 2 teams versus what we had today versus 12. And I think if you're making that argument, it's along the lines of like we kind of are in a place where there's a handful of really good teams, and everyone else.
If somewhere here we find somebody that wants to pay what $1.5 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion, or whatever a year, I just don't buy that it's going to have that gigantic amount of impact. And there's one problem that we're not talking about is just because there's a 12 team playoff and just because there's more money involved for the schools and for the bowl system in general, does that mean all those guys that are getting ready to go to the draft this next year, are they going to play in all those bowl games? Are they going to play in those playoff games?
Yeah.
Are the guys that are in those 9, 10, 11, 12, hell, the guys playing from 5 down on those teams, are they going to play in those extra games? Or are they just going to say they're going to tap out and say, I'll see you later? And that affects the quality of the game. Hell, we all know it affected the heck out of the quality of the games in the bowls of the guys that didn't play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and that's
maybe that'll help. I don't know.
Yeah. I think if you're advocating the playoff, that they would be less likely to sit out because, hey, it's a win and go on game. It's a good showcase. So maybe that does.
They don't care about the team they're playing for because this is the player empowerment era. And most of the guys who would be thinking about sitting out, their real goal isn't winning a national championship. It's getting to the NFL. NFL. So to Randy's point, I guess we'll find out. We'll find out really soon.
But we gotta love the fact home games on campus. That idea sold me.
Home games on campuses and access to the smaller schools. Like at the end of the day, I would love to see a mid-major.
I mean, Notre Dame or wherever, Iowa, whoever. Just the fact you're going to see some cold football. These bowl games, with the exception of some of these Chimichanga Bowl, the Chimichanga Bowl in like Idaho or something. The rest are all warm locations. I think it would be compelling to see a Florida go to Wisconsin or something in December.
Yeah. Well, and that's the storyline.
But let's look at 1 through 12. Look at the bowl rankings last year, or the final rankings last year. There was one group of 5 team in the top 12.
Cincinnati, right? Yeah.
And and Luke Fickell's done a great job.
No,
and somebody's going to snatch him out of there, no matter what anybody says. But I don't know if you're trying to make it equitable. I just think you got to include some of those. You got to include the guys coming out of the American. You got to include the guys coming out of the Mountain West.
I completely agree.
Give the guys. You got to give those guys in the group of 5 a shot, or it's not equitable. It's not being fair to everybody. But life's not fair either, so I should just get over that, I guess.
Well, and we're our studio here. We're only a few miles away from the Rose Bowl. Of course, you're a UCLA alumni. What do you think about UCLA coming into the 2021 season? Any chance they're surprise some people in the Pac-12? Where do you think they lie?
I think they got a shot. I mean, they've obviously, and they've kind of paid the price of giving this young man, the experience, but they've got an experienced quarterback with some starts who's made some mistakes and made some great plays. They've got a pretty good group of skill players. I think they're at the line positions, both offensive and defensive. They're about as good as they've been in the last 5, 6, 7 years, which is kind of where things have fallen off more than anything else. I think they got a shot. I really do.
I like them as a
much improved. 8-4.
Yeah. And especially
9-3. I mean, I don't know, that'd be their upside, I believe.
And they're in a conference where no one is really swinging the big stick. And I think that's what gives them the chance. Like
certainly a live dog in there. And especially with that system, it does seem like it'll take a little while to get everyone recruiting the right players, getting them to buy into the system.
But what about Randy lives in Georgia?
Yeah.
The Georgia Bulldogs, this is the year for them to do it. If there is ever going to be a year, what's the hype? Are your neighbors sitting there saying, "Hey,
he's
JT
in dog
Daniels"?
Yeah. I'm in Georgia. I'm in dog country. My oldest daughter's got two daughters who are 5 and 3, and one of the first things they taught them was "woo dog sick 'em" and that whole woo, 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 at the kickoff and all that. But I hear this every year. I'll be honest. This is going to be Georgia. Georgia is the best 10-2 team in the country
every year,
and until they can break out of that mold.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Mark Richt actually, I believe, has one more. They fired Mark Richt and brought in Kirby Smart, and I think both good football coaches. But they fired Richt for doing this, and thus far, yes, he would have one more win than what Kirby Smart has done. So I feel like it's.
They've gotten close. They've gotten close, and they got to the playoff, and they got to the final. They got right there as close as they could actually taste it. So I think JT Daniels is a kid that can get them there. It's a shame that they couldn't play him the whole year last year. Yeah. I think they would have had a pretty good shot last year with him. If he was healthy, but you'll see a different kind of Georgia offense, I believe, if they're willing to open it up. Georgia's been Georgia now for so long. I'm not sure if they can
kind of stuck in their ways.
There are certain, if their offensive playbook was a box of crayons, there are certain colors they don't touch. they need to get a little more creative. They need a little more pink and chartreuse and puce, and they got to get out there on the edges.
Get a little wild, mix some colors up.
Yeah, I mean they picked a guy named Stenson last year to start. Again, so it's like, decisions are decisions.
Another program you're pretty familiar with, Navy, of course. What do you think about Navy's chances coming in? Coming off a weird season like many college teams. What do you think of their odds going into 2021?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the strangest football season I know that Navy's ever had.
Yeah.
But you look at all those games and some of those circumstances through the course of the entire season. God bless Ken Niumatalolo. He did something early on that not that many football coaches do. And that's 100% look after not only his kids, but his staff, the whole program, and not want to expose them to any kind of potential danger.
Yeah.
Now there's arguments about what kind of danger it was and whatnot for hitting. But he did nothing hitting wise. They just did drills. And too bad, because they kind of looked like it in that opener against BYU.
Oh, yeah.
And it took them steps through the course of the season. They finished 3-7. They are always dangerous when they have really bad years. Just look at, Ken's been there. This will be his 14th year. Look at every year he's had a losing season. They snap back pretty good. And despite their schedule, despite having, they open with Marshall, but then they have Air Force, and they get Cincinnati, and they get Memphis, and they go down to UCF, all those guys, Notre Dame. I expect Navy to have a good year. Now, what number does that mean? I really have no idea, because they're a team. They live and die by late wins. They live and die by having the ball, eating the clock, and sort of slowly strangling their opponent. That's dangerous.
Win totals at 3.5. I'm on the over. I think Niumatalolo, one of the most underrated coaches in America.
Yeah, 4 seems definitely reasonable.
I'm way over 3.5 personally.
Yeah, I remember. I think Arizona almost hired Niumatalolo a couple of years ago. If you look at their program recently, they've had a ton of problems. So I think they're regretting not hiring Niumatalolo. I think he's a great coach. Hammer that over if any fans out there.
Well, and if you want to circle a spot, since he's got a tough stretch of games before the Navy game where they have to travel to Navy, so perhaps we have a little sleepwalking. Navy takes it down as a big underdog. Well, of course we're going over on Navy. We love Navy.
Randy, what's your take on teams still running the triple option? Army, Navy, I think Georgia Southern, Air Force. Only a few of them out there left. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't think there's anybody left that truly runs the option. These coaches have gotten so innovative by formation and substitution and personnel of what they do with it. Probably Troy Calhoun at Air Force did the most initially with it as far as that goes. He would run the wishbone formation, the inverted bone. He'd do all sorts of different things. And Army does a lot of that now. Navy does a lot of it. I think it's for those programs, and you're trying to compete nationally. I think it's the way to go. You want to stand toe to toe with a pro offense with Notre Dame, and you're one of these guys that can't recruit that kind of kid. There's only one result.
What about as a lineman, blocking for the triple option? Would you rather be blocking for something like the triple option, or some of these innovative air raid programs as a lineman? What would your preference be?
Yeah, I'm a little biased because my first 2 years in college we ran the wishbone. The second 2 years in college we ran the Houston veer. So I spent my entire college career, whether I was playing center or guard, with all my weight on my hands and coming forward. That's, to me, is doing Navy games and getting to sort of get back to my roots in those games is a lot of fun for me, because they are downhill, and that's what makes them hard to play for teams. I mean, if you get a team that's playing like Navy on a Saturday and is going to play like the following Thursday, or Friday, or even the next Saturday, that's a tough one for them, because Navy may be a lot of things, but physical. They're as physical as anybody these guys play, and everything about them is
smash mouth.
I will say, as a
smashing
fan,
off the ball.
Yeah, as a fan of Virginia Tech for many years, like having to play Georgia, no matter how the Georgia Tech game went, the team was beat up the next week, because it was 60 minutes of just a fight.
But that's my argument, man. It's like I heard Nick Saban talk about how when he played Army and Georgia Southern, Alabama gave up the most defensively giving up yards per rush. And I'm like, well, why would, if you're Vanderbilt or someone, why not go to it? Because you got to play Bama. You're not going to win that recruiting battle. You know what I mean? Like, just try to get creative. Why is no one doing it? We saw Nebraska and Georgia Tech have success. Georgia Tech won an Orange Bowl doing it. Why do you think that is, Randy?
Perception, which bleeds into recruiting, which bleeds into NIL, sponsorship, everything else. If you remember, there was a certain little, like 6'5", 6'6" receiver who played for Georgia Tech.
Yep.
When they were running the ball 50, 60 times a game by the name of Calvin Johnson.
Did it right for himself.
And the Calvin Johnsons of the world that have faith in coaches and are willing to play in that kind of offense, they don't exist right now.
Yeah.
Those guys go to the big dogs. And that's what scares people. But when you look at Kansas, why in the hell shouldn't Kansas run it? Like you said, you mentioned Vanderbilt. Why in the hell shouldn't Vanderbilt do that? And there's teams all over the country that could do that, but they think they're going to miss out on guys.
Yeah, I think they have to be real with themselves. Like, you're not getting a 5-star quarterback recruit, though. He's just never going to come to Kansas.
And doesn't your fan base want to make a bowl? It's almost like an automatic bowl berth if you go to this. Because
no one runs it in the NFL, and that's a debilitating factor. But
plus, offensive line wise, it's a big detriment too.
Yeah,
because you look at the NFL, you look at the big boys in major college football. How many downhill running teams are there?
Well, and if you're an offensive lineman that thinks he has a shot at going pro, don't you want to get some good pass pro on film? Isn't that part of the issue?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
You go. That's a big part of it. It wasn't when I came out, because the majority of college football back those days were some form of the option. Everybody was running the wishbone or something like that. SC was the exception. But SC was running the power I, with student body right and student body left and just hitting you between the eyes. So yeah, it was, it's different, but from the recruiting standpoint, it scares a lot of athletic departments and it scares a lot of fan bases.
I just wonder though, you got to zig when you zag. Mike Leach, friend of the program here, he came out and was doing the air raid back in the 90s when everyone was like, what the heck is this?
Yeah. Cause you couldn't compete recruiting. He came up with a different solution. So maybe going back to the triple option makes sense for some of the schools.
We've also fulfilled the dream of Colby to talk about the triple option on the show here for almost 10 minutes. So
thanks for you for indulging him.
But Colby brings up the triple option and whatnot. But for instance, what a guy like Mike Leach did in the from the offensive side. Do you remember? It wasn't that long ago that the NFL wouldn't touch a quarterback that was a system guy.
Yeah. Yep.
How many of those guys coming out of the air raid and coming out of some of these other offenses in Kentucky or whatnot? The NFL looked at it and went, I don't know about that. Well, now those coaches are offensive coordinators and head coaches in the NFL. And they're running all that stuff now.
Look at
so those kids that grew up playing 7-on-7, now it's right across the board from ninth grade into the pros. You're teaching the same concepts and it's a huge advantage now for these pro coaches.
That's why if I'm the Detroit Lions, look, you've won one playoff game, triple option. You've won one playoff game in like 60 years, right? Why not?
They certainly have the running backs for it. And maybe
I thought you were going to say Mike Leach.
That would be a great, that fan base with Leach as the head coach would be pretty awesome.
That's a good move too, though. Anything right now, you've been losing so many. One playoff win in 60 years since Bobby Lane?
Yeah. If there's two programs I would love to see win a Super Bowl just because of the fans and their loyalty. One would be Detroit, the other one would be Cleveland.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cleveland had to swallow that so-called, this isn't a franchise team. We're just bringing them back. Okay.
I mean, you gotta like the Browns going into this year, though, right?
Let's just wait till after Baker because Baker's already got too many commercials. We don't need more Baker commercials.
Yeah, Detroit and Cleveland. You're right. Just two fan bases, and they haven't bailed on the team at all. They're still as passionate and still supporting them. I know talking a ton of football, and of course you can get more Randy Cross football over at randycross.com, the Randy Cross podcast. Also hit on a bunch of other topics. I know you're a big barbecue guy, big smoked meats fan. Do you have a go-to dish for like a football Sunday? You're hanging out all day. What's the go-to move there?
Well, football Sundays, I'm usually eating in an airport.
Hell so yeah, coming back from
a college game.
Yeah.
But I do like. I don't mind cooking stuff and keeping it, and telling my wife, "Hey, look, go in the freezer, take out this. It'll be fine by tomorrow night for dinner." I just did a big pork butt. I've got a pork belly over here defrosting on the counter that I'm going to cook up. Cook up tomorrow, and I got some ribs probably for Friday or Saturday this week, and. I just love doing that. Do you do it with the ribs? Do you marinate them ahead of time? Because my dad is a huge advocate of like the overnight marinade. What do you do to get the ribs ready? I trim them a little bit. I take this, the skin off the back. That wonderful stuff that drives you crazy. I take as much of that as I can off. And I rub them. I don't marinate them. I'm not a big marinade guy. I want to taste the ribs, not the sauce.
Yeah, get a nice little dry rub on those ribs.
Sounds like we should come over this weekend, Randy.
Hang out, get a barbecue going. Well, Randy, appreciate you calling in and giving us your time. Make sure you give Randy a follow on Twitter at Randy Cross FB and check out the podcast over at randycross.com. Thanks a bunch, Randy. Appreciate it.
No problem, guys. My pleasure.
Oh yeah, man, Randy. True football guy. If you're a football guy, you know where you got to be? In the trenches over at underdogfantasy.com. Use that promo code SGPN. Get a free, basically they give you a free $25. You can use it on anything. But if you're a hashtag Degens only, why aren't you using that on your chance to win $1 million over on the Best Ball Mania 2 entry? Again, Best Ball Fantasy, underdog.com, underdogfantasy.com. Great platform. Awesome place to draft, and use that promo code SGPN. Get a free $25 entry. They have a lot of other options, other sports. You can parlay some other props. Check them all out. Underdogfantasy.com. Promo code SGPN. Colby, you got your wish. You got to talk about the triple option. Congratulations.
Yes. That was 10 minutes. Did we clock that in? We should do a triple option segment on every guest.
Not only that, but he was complicit in the conversation. Yes. This is, we didn't have to force him. Seemed like another gentleman who enjoys just talking about football in July.
Yep. Got a nice Hunter Biden dig in, which was pretty funny.
Could be a new spirit.
The Ronnie Lott story is really what stole
again.
The show,
yeah.
Right?
Like I always thought Ronnie Lott, that story of cutting your pinky off. I thought that was something I just heard on the playground and was urban legend. Like like the chick with the frozen hot dog that you find out. Oh wait, that really wasn't a girl who went to my high school. That was just some urban legend that got passed from school to school.
All these years. Well, what's funny is now
I always thought it was urban legend. I didn't realize it was real.
Well, and what's funny is now completely unrelated to a grown man cutting his pinky off to play football. Like those urban legends still live. Hearing them coming through the children now, it's pretty funny because
So the question was Mike Vrabel then serious when he said he cut his dick off?
100%. But what he kind of told the story.
He one-upped Ronnie Lott.
He kind of told the story. It was like not a big deal. Like obviously you're going to cut off your pinky versus putting pins through this tiny little baby bone.
It was a different era. It was a different.
Yeah, I still would have played with the cast.
Don't you think that he
I think there's a middle ground there, but again, that's me. And the real downer of the story was that he played in the game and they ended up losing 17-3 to your New York Giants, right?
Well, that was
back when they were a viable franchise.
That was a tough team. That was before Belichick defected to the filthy fighting crafts.
Oh, all right. Well, thanks again for Randy Cross for checking out the show and coming on, and of course, thank you guys for tuning in, listening. Let's get you downloading the app. Again, we got some big stuff contest wise, some mega prize. prizes potentially given out. So you want to download the app. Exclusive place to get involved in those contests.
And honestly, Sean, as this is hitting your ear holes, audience, you are less than 2 weeks away from what I think will be the beginning of our NFL preview content, which it's crazy to think about, but we're less than 2 weeks away from August, Sean.
August is coming.
Holy
Football
shit.
is coming. Everything's happening. Download that app, SGPN, in the App Store, Google Play Store. Studio. Don't miss it. And of course, check out the college experience. Give Colby a reason for living, and download all these 130 college football episode previews.
I want to get a little PSA. If you are a college football experience fan and you're struggling with the new Apple console because it's shit.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because it's not made for feeds that are putting out so many hot episodes. Check out Overcast. Downloads all the episodes for you. Just hear me out, or in the app.
Yeah,
or in the app.
Ryan.
Well, I'm just giving people options.
No, but the option one should be our app. Perfect place.
Well, we got to talk.
Sounds like you're talking triple option right there. You got the.
We got to talk. We got to talk to the app guy about a download all button. But anyway, listen. There are how many episodes to catch up on now?
Oh, we're like we're in the 50s.
Let's say you're just coming back to football because you're a normal human. It sounds like you have a couple. You're going on vacation. You got a couple long drives. Tune out the family. Throw the earbuds in. Get it done.
Would you rather learn about UTEP's backup running back, or hear your wife talk about how she hates driving through the mountains?
She might be into UTEP's backup.
Sick.
Yeah. You got the Dramamine.
Participating in the Sports Gambling Podcast.
For the Sports Gambling Podcast, I'm Sean, stacking the money green, and he is Ryan.
Shout out to Randy Cross, also former collegiate rugby player.
Kramer, let it ride.